Hi, this is Chris Smith with Local Joe's. At Local Joe's, we help local business. Hi, this is Chris Smith with Local Joe's.
This is City Pulse Newsmakers, a weekly look at the issues and the people behind them in Greater Lansing. Brought to you by City Pulse, Lansing's weekly alternative newspaper. And now, here's your host, City Pulse publisher, Burl Schwartz.
Good morning. I got a robocall recently from my good friend Ben Carson. It was a wake-up call that Politics 2016 is already heating up. With us to talk about what's going to happen in Michigan is a newbie on our show, Zach Gorchow, editor of Gongwer, the Capital News Service, Joe DeSano from DeSano Strategies, Susan Demas from Michigan Politics. Did I get that right?
Inside Michigan
Inside
Politics.
Michigan Politics. Thank
Close
you
enough.
very much. And Kyle Malin from Mears, the Capital Newsletter. Kyle, let's start with you. Kind of just lay things out for us. What's coming up in 2016 in Michigan?
Well, in 2016, we're going to start in March with a presidential primary. Secretary of State's already okayed 14 names for the ballot. For the Republican side, 3 for the Democratic side. They're probably going to have to take one of those names off now that Bobby Jindal's decided to hang it up. Probably more to come, but we're going to start in March with that. Because of our calendar here in election consolidations, we will have a May election for some municipalities, not everybody, where we're going to have local millages and some local races on that one. And then in August, we have primary for congressional races, and we are also going to have primary for state house. And then we move on into November, and we've got the presidential election obviously being the big one. We'll have congressional races, we'll have the state house. But since this is a presidential election year, there's not a lot of state offices on there outside of your Supreme Court races. We're going to have a couple of those on there. We've got 2 sitting Supreme Court justices who are going to be up, and both of them Snyder appointees, and the voters are going to get a chance to decide if they want to keep them or not. And then, of course, the regular university, state university, and Board of Ed slots that are up every 2 years. Those are in stagnated terms. So we'll have those too for those interested.
It's going to be a busy year.
Yeah, not as busy as last year, I think, but still with the presidential election, that usually does suck up a lot of oxygen.
Let's talk about what we don't know, which is ballot proposals. Kyle, what are you betting is going to make it?
Well, I think it's a pretty good chance that this constitutional amendment that we're hearing about now, about the changes to the Constitution on equal rights for gays, lesbians, and transgendered, they have a real firm in place, a real team that has had a history of success. My guess is that they're going to get the money together to put sexual orientation, gender identity, put that as protected classes in the Constitution. I would think that's a pretty sure bet. I think that this group that is looking for equal or some kind of accommodations for people who work and make sure they get paid time off, this is a group that was successful in getting signatures for minimum wage, and if they were successful with that, I'm going to presume that they've got a history and they have a shot at getting on. As for the rest, I think it's a coin flip. We've got a couple marijuana proposals out there right now. I don't know where their money's coming from on either of them, and so I think that's a little tough. And then, of course, with Ohio's election coming up just recently and it going down overwhelmingly, I don't know what the mood's going to be for that. But then we also have that one ballot proposal about raising corporate income tax to pay for the roads. That's still a possibility, but not all the unions have gotten on board with that. So if those 3 unions who are bankrolling that are able to get everything together, we could see that one as well. And the last one I just want to mention, prevailing wage. I don't think that will get on the ballot because their first signatures are junk, but even if they were good, it's pretty likely the legislature would probably take care of that before it went to the ballot.
All right, Susan, Kyle, miss anything, and what are your thoughts on some of these ballot proposals?
We just saw a pretty big blow to the anti-fracking proposal that was out there. They may regroup, but they've been short on signatures. There's also been an effort by the League of Women Voters to redo our redistricting process. Not sure if they're going to get that off the ground or not.
Joe and Zach, let's take some of these, the LBGT one. What's your sense of where the public is at, on, especially on transgender rights issues?
Well, clearly the transgender issue is the hot button here. I think with the recent successes that the LGBT community has had nationally, my advice would be to press ahead and move forward as fast as you can.
But we saw in Houston that they undid their ordinance.
Well, Houston's a hellhole.
Yeah, they got a lesbian mayor.
Well, you know what? Houston is not Michigan.
Yeah.
Michigan is
You think well, are we liberal? Do we see numbers that indicate that Michigan is?
There's private polling that shows this is in the mid-70s.
Yeah, this is a really interesting dichotomy here, because you've got a lot of Democrats and liberals who are usually just in lockstep allied with the LGBT community say, we need to do this. There are people out here who are being hurt. They're losing their jobs because they're getting married now. They're being discriminated against, and something has to be done. But there is a great reticence, it seems, in the LGBT community, and at least on some of the leading organizations that have been fighting this, about doing this. There seems to be a fear of losing. There's a fear of the kind of, in some cases, really scurrilous messaging that was used in Houston, the bathroom message, basically just dehumanizing transgender people and what that will mean for them. And while everyone's trying to make nice publicly, you talk to people behind the scenes, there's some genuine resentment in the LGBT organizational community toward this proposal being done without their explicit, let's go ahead and do this.
The higher pay, I'll call it the higher pay ballot proposal that Kyle mentioned. Can you drill down a little on that? What would that do?
The sick pay, the
I
sick
don't
time
know.
proposal.
That's why I want you to drill down.
Basically, the idea is that everyone should be allowed to have paid sick time. That if you are sick, if you have a dependent who is ill, that you should be able to take some time off, a day off, however many hours you would earn some time as you work, to get yourself well, to help get your family member well. That as people know, not all jobs have sick time. It's something a lot of us take for granted. People can just be simply fired for doing this. So
would it set a minimum amount of sick time?
As I recall, and I don't remember off the top of my head, I think you would earn time. People can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe you earn time as you work. So it's not like you would get a block of hours, but say you work, for every 2 weeks you work, you get a certain number of hours.
Is there a precedent for this anywhere?
There are cities that
Are there
have
cities
passed
in
similar.
Michigan or nationally?
Nationally.
Yeah. Is this going to be one of those arguments like we hear over minimum wage? You cannot do this to employers.
Yeah, it'll increase the cost of your hamburger, something of that nature.
Which you shouldn't be eating anyway.
Because this is really geared toward the fast food shops that don't offer sick time to any employees, and that if you're sick, you got to make the choice: do you show up and sneeze in somebody's food, or do you stay home and not take a paycheck? And unfortunately, for a lot of employees, that's kind of the choice that they have to make, and a lot of times they just go into work and sneeze in the hamburger, right? And so I think this is what the workers are going to be arguing, is that just for a safe work environment, we need these kind of protections on the books, because the legislature isn't going to give it to us.
The recreational marijuana proposals that are out right now for signatures, and I gather the one more similar to what happened in Ohio, they claim they have 210,000. They're pausing to review before they, invest in what they need to do to get the rest. The other one, I don't know how they're doing, but they're still out there in the field. Is the threat or the option that these may be on the ballot next year what's driving the medical marijuana legislation right now, the dispensary legislation, Kyle?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a genuine fear that if we have legalized marijuana in Michigan, how are we going to control it? Where are people going to be buying it from, and under what circumstances? And so I do believe that it's that fear that has driven the law enforcement community to the table and said, hey, we're going to have to just go ahead and agree to something. And the major legislative stumbling block on that, Senator Rick Jones, has acquiesced and said, yeah, I guess you're right. This is probably the best that we're going to do, so we might as well get this legal framework in place now. who's going to be the producers, who's going to be the middleman, who is going to be able to sell it. Get that set in place now so that if we get it, and if it's not in 2016, maybe down the road, we've already got this system in place so we don't have a mess on our hands.
All right, and then Susan?
Just to clarify, there were originally 3 proposals out there.
Right.
And the one that was similar to Ohio, where it kind of had the cartel system of a certain number of growers, that one has gone by the wayside.
But the one that I call the Republican one,
yeah, that's a different
big,
one.
but isn't
It's
that
not a
along
cartel.
the same lines? Not at all.
No,
Okay.
it's definitely more moderate than the proposal from kind of your traditional activists. There are less plants that you can grow. They do not allow felons to, grow plants or consume, which is a huge
And that's the hot
issue.
button with law enforcement, because you have one proposal that allows felons to grow, and the other proposal doesn't.
You think that nobody would want felons to grow?
Well,
but
they-
some
they-
of the feeling is that many of the people are felons because they were growing
Ah,
prior to the law,
see.
and so this would cut them out.
So we really need
But from a
amnesty
political point of view, I'm all for throwing the felons over the side.
There's a couple other drivers to this. I mean, you've had probably dozens of cities that have gone ahead and said, we are not going to prosecute
Right.
people
Lansing
for,
included.
yeah, exactly, for possession of an ounce or less, or 21 or older, and it's on, it's not on public property. So you're starting to deal with the dispensaries have come back. Initially they went away, now they've come back, and there's a sense, this has to be regulated. And you have a lot of people who are using this for medical purposes who don't want to smoke it. One of these bills would allow the edibles version. So for children who this medical marijuana would be helpful. I mean, their parents are like, well, yeah, I want them to get the drug. I don't want them to have to smoke it. So the edible, but that needs to be legalized. So.
All right, very good. Well, let's move on to the presidential primaries, March 9th, am I remembering? 8th? 10th? Well,
One of
those days.
One of those days.
Susan, the Democratic side, the 3 I presume have been approved are Sanders, Clinton, and O'Malley.
Oh, and O'Malley's probably going to be out of the race here in the next week.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
He looks so good on TV.
It's hard when you run out of money.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe if he hadn't spent so much on looking good, he'd be around. But so Sanders and Clinton head to head, possibly. Where's that going to go?
Quite possibly the race will already be over on the Democratic side by the time it makes out to Michigan. It looks very good for Hillary Clinton in Iowa. She's been gaining a lot of ground in New Hampshire, and if she wins the first 2 states, that really sets her on pace. I would expect she would do very well in Nevada and South Carolina as well.
South Carolina was going to be a killing field for
Sanders. A Brooklyn Jew and socialist.
Yeah, I don't see that really
don't
working.
know.
I mean, it should, by all means.
Yeah.
It should, but it won't.
Yeah.
This looks like a crush. I think Hillary Clinton. There was some doubt there because she had a really rough year, and then it was like there was that first debate, and then all of a sudden it seemed like Democrats remembered, oh yeah, she's Hillary Clinton, and this is somebody we've respected for years and has the organization, and he's Bernie Sanders, who wasn't even a member of the party, and is to the left of almost all of us. And has sort of an inexperienced organization, and she just seems to have taken command now.
Sanders is wish fulfillment for the far left wing. That's all he is, and it's not enough to win a primary, and it's not enough to become leader of the free world.
And it's not enough to push Hillary toward the left. I think we've seen that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I
So
think-
it's more than
yeah.
wish fulfillment,
Well,
right?
but
In that sense.
he's a fantasy figure beyond that.
Right. Well, if there's a people's revolution, people actually vote.
Let's do it.
Yeah, right, okay. On the Republican side, as I said, I got a call from a robocall from Ben Carson.
Oh, I got one of those too.
Did you? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't heard from anybody else yet. I gather I see Trump is surging again in the polls, and he has been here once or twice. And Kyle, what are you thinking? Rubio's moving up.
Yeah, Rubio's moving up. He seems to be the fashionable candidate that folks think will emerge when it's all said and done. And I think everybody's just sitting there waiting for Carson and Trump to fall so that we can really get to the discussion about Will it be Rubio? Will it be Bush? How much will Cruz play a part of it? But they haven't gone away yet. You know, they're still there. You would think that some of the things that Carson said in his book that appears to have been maybe fictitious, at the very least an exaggeration, would have some kind of impact. They haven't seemed to have much impact in the polling I've seen. And we keep also waiting for Donald Trump's just bombastic personality and his non-filter to catch up with him. Again, that hasn't seemed to do anything either in the polls. But again, those are polls. Those aren't necessarily the people who vote in the Iowa caucuses. And so on voting day, when Iowans go to their caucuses, it could be a completely different story.
Because, I mean, Rick Santorum was at 1% a month before Iowa last time, and he won Iowa. Susan, your thoughts on the Republican side?
I think that Ben Carson seems to be shaping up to possibly win Iowa because, you know, he fits that evangelical Christian mold very well, and then fading off into obscurity because he's certainly not going to play in New Hampshire. And I haven't really heard that he's had great organization anywhere else. Trump is a phenomenon. He's defied political scientists. He's defied all of us smart people in the press. I'm not sure that he is going anywhere. His numbers are going up. He's surged in New Hampshire again. I think that this may be a very different election than anyone planned for it to be.
Does the Trump factor, Joe, make it more likely that this Republican nomination is going to take longer than the Democratic one?
I would expect the Republican nomination process to continue up into maybe April or May, especially if Cruz begins to emerge, and I suspect he will. I think he's going to bring some conservative shock troopers. I don't think there's enough atmosphere much longer for both Carson and Trump. So one of them is going to go away. Cruz will fill that void. And I think he has actually been very smart in building organizations in states.
What about Rubio, though? He seems to be moving up.
Well, he seems to be moving now into being potentially the establishment choice, but it hasn't cemented that yet by any means. You know, there's, I think you could say the panic button is being pushed on Jeb Bush. This was supposed to be the guy, I mean, period. And here he is, just, you know, muddling along 5-6%, whatever. And, you know, it's still so early. You know, we remember, you know, John Kerry coming back to win, John McCain coming back to win. But this is not where Jeb Bush was supposed to be.
But you have to admit, he is poised as far as finances and
he's not out of it at all. No, he still has the potential to come back.
People putting him in his political grave are naive.
Yes.
So looking at Michigan and the, you know, what we've seen in recent history in the Republican primaries, who's Michigan's Republican candidate?
We're polling just like everybody else right now because people aren't really paying attention. Our race is going to be very shaped by what happens before us in the first four contests and Super Tuesday the week before. I think you could see the race here shift very rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, just take a look at the last race here with Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum. It was supposed to be Mitt Romney's in a slam dunk, and he ended up sweating it out there at the end. You know, he didn't know if he was going to win at the end. Who would have thought Rick Santorum had nothing in Michigan before the primary election, and then all of a sudden, who was on his fifth client, right? I mean,
he had me.
Yeah, you did do something on that, didn't you? Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it really, I think, will be similar, probably, like what Kyle was saying. Like, what happens right before Michigan and who's left? There's going to be a lot of people out of this. I mean, I think we know Bush has an organization if he survives and is still around.
One here.
Yes.
Yes, he does.
Ted Cruz has an
candidates,
organization.
probably has the best organization, probably followed by Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
My prediction will be the three candidates that'll be in play by the time we roll around in Michigan are Cruz, Rubio, and Bush.
Okay. All right. Let's look at congressional races. Probably the biggest one, I would presume, is right here in Ingham County. Kyle, you're not sure?
Well, no, I would say it's the first congressional because it's going to be an open seat. Dan Benishek is going to not run for another term. So anytime.
This is the Lon Johnson.
Yeah, so that's going to be Lon Johnson, and then
how's he doing?
Well, he's raising a lot of money, that's for sure. You know, the big rub on him is going to be if he really lives in the district and if he's a carpetbagger and that kind of thing.
Where do they claim?
Well, he has his actual home and what he filed with the with Congress there is that he has a home, I think it was in Royal Oak, and he's got something in Detroit or something of that nature. But he didn't list anything in the 1st Congressional District. Now, he's got a cottage that he lives out of in Kalkaska, allegedly, and that's kind of where his home base is. But the Republicans are going to take a lot of shots at that. Does he really live in Kalkaska, that kind of thing.
Johnson, for our audience, was, of course, the last head of the Democratic Party in Michigan.
Yeah. Then we got the Republican. We don't know how that field will shape up yet. We've got the state senator, Tom Casperson, is in, but he won't be the only candidate, that's for sure. We're going to watch Jason Allen, the former state senator in Traverse City, see if he gets in. Presumably he will, but we got to wait to see. And then we'll see what happens with Lee Chatfield, who's also a Northern Michigan guy. Pete Battaglia is a possibility. The Tea Party folks are going to want somebody on their side. Their dream candidate is to recruit Dave Agema up there. I think that's a pipe dream. But it's still kind of funny to listen to.
He's a dream candidate?
Oh, for some segments of the Tea Party, yeah.
For people who love bigots and racists.
Susan, the 1st District, educate me a bit. I'm surprised there are Democrats, rather.
Oh, it actually was a Democratic district for years. Bart Stupak held it for almost a couple decades. He retired in 2010. Which turned out to be a fabulous Republican year, and that's when Dan Benishek actually won. Now he's not running again; he's fulfilling that campaign pledge. But it's a marginal district. But Democrats up there tend to be more conservative for sure.
Yeah, I was wondering because Lon Johnson didn't come across when we've had him on the show as conservative.
No, but he does hunt.
Okay.
And he raised enough money to push Benishek out of the race.
Oh, that's what happened?
That's what I believe happened,
okay.
yeah.
Well, I would agree with Joe that he knows how to raise money.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing very successfully right now. And it's putting a lot of pressure on the Republicans to start doing the same thing. I mean, Casperson's in right now, and he's starting to raise money, but that's the problem that a Republican's going to have to face when they get in. What are they going to do personally to get themselves ready? The Nationals are obviously going to pour their money in, and that will take care of that. But in order to draw that national money, you got to prove that you can do it yourself.
This is a tough race for the Democrats. I mean, you do have the Western and Central UP and Alpena are the Democratic core of the district, but Lon Johnson is pro-choice. He's been very pro-gay rights, right down the line. I mean, they're gonna rub the Democratic Party platform right down his throat, and he's from the Lower Peninsula. It's better to have a Democratic candidate be from the Upper Peninsula generally. This is a seat the Republicans should win, and you've also still got resentment toward President Obama.
Do they need to have a moderate Republican candidate to win it, though?
Casperson I wouldn't describe him as a quote-unquote moderate Republican, but by far he is the most center-right of the potential candidates, and he would be their best candidate for a general election. There's no doubt about that.
All right. 8th Congressional District, that's where Melissa Gilbert from Little House on the Prairie lives in Howell, and Mike Bishop. Kyle, you and I saw Mike Bishop in person. I know that wasn't supposed to be a campaign speech, but it was god-awful boring. And I'm just wondering, is he going to have a hard time with somebody like Melissa Gilbert who knows how to put on a show?
Well, I mean, he starts with such a head start in that race. I mean, the district is made for Republicans, at least a 55% Republican base at the very least. Now, I mean, she will get a benefit in that it's a presidential year, and Hillary Clinton will likely be on the head of the ticket, and so that will help in that regard. But and it also helps that she has access to a different stream of money than past Democratic candidates in that district. She's got her Hollywood network that she can tap into, and she's already tapped into it. I think that's what's got the Democrats.
New York.
And New York, it's what's got the national Democrats really excited, because she's got some access to new money. It's just really hard because, Bishop, you can say what you want about him. Yes, he's boring, but he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's a standard, solid Republican who toes the party line, very good with the leadership establishment. He's not a teabagger. So, he's not going to make any slip-ups to make this easy for the Democrats.
I saw a smile when he said he's not a teabagger. Susan?
Yeah, a humorous term. Sorry. I think that it's gotten increasingly difficult for anybody to buck the basic party base of a district. I mean, you saw that in 2012, Obama won by almost 10 points. He didn't take any congressional candidates with him. The cotels just aren't what they used to be. So you have a district like the 8th that, you know, is on the cusp of being marginal. It's very hard for that one to go.
Joe, you know a lot about where to hit candidates, where it hurts. Is this business about her owing taxes going to be a real problem for her?
I would love to tell you no.
But
I think it is a grievous wound that should have been taken care of before she got into the race.
Yeah.
And you know, she didn't, so she's going to have to live with it.
we don't like our Hollywood stars to be broken in debt.
Well, I mean, everyone hits hard times.
Right. Zach, your thoughts on the 8th?
You know, unless this is going to be all about, you know, where can the Democrats get an exceptional turnout of their people in the presidential year? You know, Bishop won in the gubernatorial year, lower turnout. Presuming Hillary Clinton is the nominee, is there enough excitement to get a massive turnout, sort of at that Obama type level, to give Melissa Gilbert a chance? I'm pretty skeptical of that.
Well, the nut you got to crack is Northern Oakland County.
That's what I was just going
and
to say.
Livingston.
You know, Northern Oakland County is the key. Can Melissa Gilbert, with her you know, Little House on the Prairie history, you know, she has a lot of appeal to people who are not really, you know, potentially who are not political minded, that they can say, oh yeah, Melissa Gilbert, you know, Laura Ingalls Wilder, you know, that can open a door for her, perhaps. But you know, Northern Oakland County is, you know, I know we think of Oakland County as moderate country. Well, Northern Oakland County is conservative, and that is a conservative area. This is not, you know, socially liberal, fiscally conservative areas. These are conservative areas. So I think it's going to be tough for her, and it's probably a Mike Bishop win, but it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility.
All right. Anybody hearing much, if anything, about the 7th?
Democrats are still trying to get Gretchen Driscoll moving in a forward direction. That district's really hard. I mean, Mark Schauer won it during that really strong Obama year in 2008, but that's such a tough district to really do much in. Wahlberg's kind of started to cement himself a little bit. So Driscoll's doing well as far as doing what she has to do as far as a traditional candidate goes, but that is an uphill climb for Dems.
Anybody have any other thoughts?
It's also a different district than 2008. You know, Tim Wahlberg got a much more favorable district. The Battle Creek area is gone. Monroe is in its place. And it's deceptively Republican down there. And the counties that vote are the ones that border Indiana and Ohio. They vote every time, and they're not going to vote for Gretchen Driscoll.
All right, we're almost out of time, but just quickly, Gretchen Whitmer's out there running for governor for 2018. Any Democrats going to take her on?
Oh, I think there's a long list.
Really?
I believe Mike Duggan will still be a candidate, although he'll shout you down if you suggest it.
He'll break your knees.
Okay.
I hope he runs. Then you've got Dan Kildee, the congressman from Flint. I absolutely believe he wants to run and is planning a run.
So you think it's going to be it could be
I think there'll be a
okay,
primary.
good. We're about out of time. I want to thank all our guests. Everybody have a great rest of your Thanksgiving weekend. We'll see you next week.